We'll probably start a minute late.
All
If that's all
right. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining our distance learning and lecture capture webinar. It looks like our YouTube stream is working, but we're having some intermittent stream errors through our cloud-based streaming service, Easy Live. So everything should be good on Zoom. So Tess, why don't you send everyone the link in YouTube to Zoom, just in case they want to join here. And we'll get started. Everybody cool with that? We are recording this webinar, so we're going to be able to post this out. Essentially, we have our distance learning and lecture capture webinar today, and it's hosted on YouTube and Facebook, but it's also hosted here on Zoom. We have some really great guests. We're joined with Epiphan and JB&A. So it's going to be a lot of fun. First of all, I wanted to talk about the giveaway that we have. So today we have an awesome giveaway. You can enter to win by scanning the QR code here. You probably already got an email about this, but you can win a PTZOptics camera. You can win a Kilo View NDI decoder, which we're going to talk about today. And you could win a Epiphan AV.io frame grabber, plus a PTZOptics webcam. So some awesome prizes for everybody today. You must be watching live to claim the prize. And JB&A is one of the distributors for audiovisual equipment with PTZOptics and Epiphan, both. So I thought I'd start by introducing Nick Smith, the VP of Technology over there, to talk a little bit about these two companies and lecture capture and distance learning.
Morning, everyone. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit what's happening in sort of the education space, Paul. And I mean, obviously, we don't need to talk about it who shall not be named, the thing that happened over the last 18 months. But what's beautiful about all of this is it's opened up this space for people to recognize that education can happen in all forms, in all places, and remote, right? And so we've got just so many clientele right now that are moving to this concept of they want to be able to remotely broadcast, they want to be able to remotely educate their students. And even as we're starting to see so many schools come back to be on premise, there are so many that have decided we're going to offer both. We're going to offer an in-premise solution and an off-premise solution. And so this is where the technologies we're talking about today, like the Pearl Nano, and of course the Kilo View encoders, and of course your cameras, make perfect sense for the education space, right? The ability to handle both classes on-premise, students that are in the classroom, but be able to broadcast remotely out to students who are all over the place. And there's a couple of trends that we're seeing kind of build up in this. One, at the college level, the collegiate level, we're starting to see schools open up and offer, and students decide, I'm going to take classes from different places, right? Different parts of the country to get the class I want. And that's all due to this ability to broadcast and get this class content online. And then with the advent of, with Zoom picking up and all these technologies sort of growing, it's allowed for greater collaboration, communication to these students who are not just passive listeners anymore, but they're active participants in the class, both remote and in-house. And so these technologies that we're hitting today are just phenomenal because of, this is what's powering today's online learning, today's remote learning. So of course, we're going to talk about the Nano, we're going to talk about the cameras, and then, I throw in the Kilo Views because they're a way to add IP into this workflow. So if you've got a hybrid environment where, let's say you've got an NDI camera, but you want to bring an additional source in, like a laptop or something, and you need to encode it, or you've got an older camera you want to add into the mix, maybe like an overhead or a document camera, these Kilo View encoders are a perfect way to add NDI or just traditional IP into the workflow to kind of just grow your production environment from inside of the classroom. So just a great sampling there. So but again, it's all changed, it's all new, it's all fresh, and it really just comes down to, once we were forced, we embraced, right? And that's the beautiful thing. We've been forced to move, and now we're embracing these technology changes and moving at breakneck speed. So very excited about this. I'll kick it back over to yourself, and let's keep moving forward with the discussion this morning. Okay.
Not hearing Paul.
I'm muted. Okay, sorry about that. I was muted for a second there. I'll kick it over to you, George, so that you can talk a little bit about the Epiphan Pearl family of lecture capture devices.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Appreciate everyone joining us today. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of share a bunch of different technologies, all of which can be purchased through JB&A, which is awesome. So as always, I'm more than happy to join Paul and everyone at PTZOptics to talk about all of these technologies and the geeky and nerdy aspects of how we deliver education better by way of these technologies. So I actually do have a little bit of slides. I know everyone is, at this point, tired of slides and Zooms and things like that, but I just want to go through some things and talk about, what it is that we have here at Epiphan that can really help deliver the technology and the needs to educational institutions. So institutions all over the world are using Epiphan solutions for lecture capture, production, hybrid events, hybrid classrooms, all these various terms we've heard thrown around for the past year. And there's a lot of things that we can do with that. Being flexible and having high performance gear for video production is a pretty important part of that. And that's really what I want to highlight here today. It starts with looking at it from an ecosystem perspective. And what we can offer as part of that ecosystem from Epiphan is solutions that are flexible, reliable, IT friendly, which is really critical as we start to implement more of these technologies in the classroom, and offering professional quality from a video and audio perspective. One of the places that starts from an ecosystem perspective is Epiphan Cloud, which is a newer platform from Epiphan, but you can think of it essentially as your command center for all of your Epiphan Pearl gear, right? So we can, in the cloud, centrally manage, control, monitor, do all these things in the cloud. And we have some fantastic educational partners and customers that have hundreds of Pearl units deployed across their campuses, all being managed centrally through the cloud, making it a breeze to do from anywhere. It means if their IT staff aren't on campus that day, they can still do a lot of the monitoring from home by leveraging a cloud-based system like this. So this is kind of the cornerstone. Now, I mentioned monitoring the Pearls. Well, the Pearls are the hardware component of this ecosystem. And we have 3 different models in the family now: the Pearl Nano, which Nick had on the desk in front of him, the Pearl Mini, and the Pearl-2. The easiest way to think about these models is small, medium, large, right? And that scale really breaks down into what do you need from it, whether it's multiple video inputs, do you need to go into full production with mixing and switching, do you need advanced features like NDI and chroma keying? There's a Pearl model for all of these different scenarios. So I won't go through the spec sheet piece by piece here today, because that could take some time, but obviously check out the full specs on our website at epiphan.com and you'll see all of the rundown there. But one of the most important components of this is that all Pearl models have a comprehensive integration with content management systems from Kaltura and Panopto. This means that a Pearl system can essentially become just another registered asset in these CMSs to make it really easy to schedule, run ad hoc events, whatever you need to do, and get those live webcast or recorded VOD assets into the CMS, super easy. And then everything lives there in the CMS where those students remotely, after the fact, whatever the case may be, have access to all that course material. So this is an extremely powerful way of integrating all of the different pieces. Of course, we can also control Pearls from third parties as well. One very popular way is using Crestron controllers, where you can control a Pearl as well as many other pieces of gear in the room from something like a Crestron touch panel, creating an easy, maybe more centralized single touch point for the professor, the instructor, whoever it is, because they might be doing it on their own these days. They might not have any other staff or assistants in the room to help them get going. And so making it easy means it's more likely to be used. And that's important for us. They can also make great companions to the video conferencing workflow. Zoom, as Nick mentioned, has become incredibly popular, throughout this past year and almost year and a half of, trying to adapt, trying to figure things out. And video conferencing is an amazing tool. It's primarily what we're doing right now for this webinar, but it doesn't always serve every piece. And so sometimes there are workflows where we need a mix of things like Zoom to carry live, two-way, fully interactive conversations. But we also need to break that out into CMS integrations like I talked about with Kaltura and Panopto, or maybe just streaming it to other CDNs or other platforms or internally. Pearls can make a great companion in parallel to VCs to just capture that video, whatever it might be, and bring it on to another path. We also have LiveScript, which is a live automated AI-driven transcription device. It'll capture the audio and do a text transcription of what's happening in that audio so that you could have maybe just a text-based file at the end of a class for study notes, or whether we're integrating video output or a web browser-based output live into another system or for people remote. And this can be amazing for breaking down barriers for those with disabilities or limitations. And that can be just a fantastic tool as part of the kit. So we have cloud, we have these various different Pearl models. We need to bring this all together. So what does that look like? Well, if you imagine, every campus is different and campuses are evolving at all levels. We have a wider variety of spaces and rooms that all need different requirements for video and audio and so on. The traditional lecture hall is the obvious one, right? But there's also specialized rooms that we are starting to expect the same level of AV integration. So maybe that's a music room or a specialized video production space like a studio that's dedicated to particular uses. Maybe it's a faculty office where they're delivering just direct messaging and they're not in the classroom at all. There's a big variety of these things now, and all of them are being equipped with video and audio. And that's where the different models of Pearls can really shine. In lecture capture, the Pearl Mini is the perfect fit. It's what it was designed for. We can bring in up to 3 video inputs at the same time. So one of them could be, an amazing PTZOptics camera, or something like the Huddle Cam simply tracks, depending on the space you're in, your audio, your presentation shares from computers or other devices, maybe a document camera, really whatever you might need. We could bring that in. We can either feed that into our CMS as individual streams or records, or maybe just do a full production with mixing and switching of those inputs all directly on the Pearl Mini, even controlled directly on the front of it using its built-in touchscreen. Pearl-2 is the biggest in the line. So, there we're talking about more specialized spaces. Maybe we have multiple PTZ cameras that we need lots of angles, and someone's controlling those with something, with the joystick controllers to manage all the cameras. But we also have a bunch of other stuff. So Nick mentioned, KiloView NDI encoders and decoders. Pearl-2 supports NDI, so we can bring that in or send it out. We can do multiple encodes simultaneously so that we can have a mix of program feeds with mixing and switching, but also ISO records at the same time. So this is really the large scale, big mix of things. But one of the areas that I think we're seeing more and more is actually the smallest scale. And this is something where maybe faculty messaging or a very basic studio environment might be perfect. And Pearl Nano fits great, where we might only have one camera and one presentation. It's a tiny space, much like where I am right now at home, and we just need to capture some basics, get it streamed and recorded. So Nano is a simple, lower cost solution to deliver the basics to do that. But of course, all of these devices can be managed through Epiphan Cloud, which makes it really easy for the IT staff to get a handle on what's going on, and be able to control everything centrally. And it's kind of amazing, you know, the mixed environments we're seeing now. And of course, you know, as Epiphan, we're here to help with any of those questions, and our partners at JB&A are as well. And so we're really looking forward to that. But that's pretty much all I had from a presentation perspective. I know a big part of today is going to be all about your questions. So if you have questions about Pearls and Epiphan products, get those queued up. I'm anxious to answer them.
Thank you so much, George. It was great, and you're kind of kicking it off for me here. I've got a quick presentation, and then please ask questions. Are you using an Epiphan Pearl already? What are you using for learning management? Let us know in the comments, and we'd love to hear. And of course, we will answer questions. So I've got a quick presentation I'm going to do here, going over distance learning. And again, I wanted everyone to remember to enter the giveaway if you haven't already. We're going to do that in just a moment. And I wanted to mention right now, PTZOptics is going to be giving away a free webcam with every single PTZ camera while supplies last. So this is one of the webcams here. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's a 1080p webcam. You can see it on our website. Today, we'll talk about PTZ cameras and webcams because they've become so important to learning, right? Just teachers being able to plug in a video source and be present in a video call, in a webinar, even to just record a simple video to the content management system or learning management system that they're using. So we've been having a lot of fun with webcams, and everyone obviously mentions Zoom. One of the great things about PTZOptics cameras is that they do work with the Zoom iPad controllers. So if you have a Zoom room or even any Zoom meeting where you have far end camera control enabled, you can take far end camera control of a PTZ camera if it's USB connected to the computer running the Zoom meeting. So that's obviously a really fun presentation for teachers. And it also works with the Simple Track 2, which is our auto tracking camera that I'm going to demonstrate in a little bit. And I wanted to mention that there's lots of different lecture capture systems available today. Obviously, George mentioned Kaltura and Panopto. Another one we work with a lot is called Echo 360, and this one integrates with Canva. But I just wanted to demonstrate our auto tracking camera here because I wanted to show just how smooth it is. There are obviously other auto tracking cameras available today. The Simple Track 2 offers SDI. It offers DVI, which can be converted to HDMI, and it actually offers USB. And that's how we can get that Zoom integration and even the Zoom PTZ controls. So you can see the camera has a small reference camera on the base of the unit there. And that's a 4K high resolution sensor. I'm going to show the software in a little bit as well. Just wanted to show this because as you think about automating and making things easier, there's no longer a need for a cameraman to get high quality video with the Simple Track, and then consider integrating it with something like the Epiphan Pearl, where now we can automate not only the camera operation, but also the video recording directly into a learning management system. So wanted to do that quick demo, and we can maybe look at the software for this camera as well. And then I also just wanted to talk a little bit about just, hopefully this will be educational, but what a single PTZOptics camera can do today with the latest firmware is really awesome. And the flexibility of PTZOptics cameras is why our customers are so happy with having kind of a future-proof solution with a 5-year warranty. But you can see a lot of our customers use SDI, and they run a long 100-foot cable possibly, or 50-foot cable to a USB converter, like the Epiphan AVIO that somebody's going to win today. A lot of higher powered classrooms and teachers that want to have like a mini video switcher. We're seeing the Blackmagic A10 Mini, but obviously the Epiphan Pearl is a great solution too, and we'll look at that in the next slide. The PTZOptics SuperJoy has just come out, and we've been getting a lot of questions about that, and to the point where it's actually on back order for a little bit. I apologize. But getting to the second half of this connection diagram here, you can see a lot of IP connectivity, the ability to remotely control and manage cameras that might be in multiple classrooms has really been awesome. And you can see NDI there. The latest NDI 5.0 software has just been released and really announced, but PTZOptics cameras support the latest versions. And there's a USB connection. Obviously, that's important for Skype and vMix. And these two bubbles over here in the bottom right are really important to PTZOptics. These are the types of softwares that we have integrations with, like vMix and Wirecast and OBS and Zoom. We even have an integration for Twitch, and those integrations make it so easy to work with. And then I've got another one here. I made this one special for you, George, because we've got the Epiphan Pearl Nano in here. And we just found out that the SuperJoy can control the Epiphan Pearl Nano over TCP. Now, this is a complicated slide. I do want my presentation to be a little educational. So just to get into a little bit of the technical details, you can see there's a SuperJoy connected to an HDMI monitor. So you can view the camera you're connected to if it's an IP camera. We've got serial cameras, IP cameras, even Sony cameras. You know, a lot of schools have different types of cameras. So the SuperJoy can work with pretty much all of them over a network. And you can see like Wi-Fi connectivity and even UDP. And we get a lot of questions about remote connectivity. How do we connect one room to the next? How do we connect one campus to the next campus? And I don't know if we're going to get questions about this specifically, but you do have Nick Smith here from JB&A. You've got George and you've got me. A lot of this great new IP networking technology is awesome. Another one is called SRT that I think I just kind of skipped over here at the bottom. But SRT is a really cool new technology as well that George knows, I think, maybe even more than I do about with integration with the Epiphan Pearl. So, classroom cameras. The Simple Track 2 is our best classroom camera that we offer today. But we also a lot of schools are just doing like 1 or 2 PTZ cameras that they can afford. In fact, some schools are even just right now trying to equip teachers with good quality webcams. So you can see a few of our webcams, and I have a couple here. Maybe we could display. I want to just show quickly. The HuddleCam HD Pro has recently been Zoom certified, and that has been really exciting for a lot of our customers because it's a 4K webcam, but it's only $299, and it's got USB and HDMI. So the USB is where the Zoom certification comes into play. You know, it's plug and play, and it's got 4K video that you can pan, tilt, and zoom. And so it's really great. It's got HDMI too. There's also an NDI version. And one of the cool things about NDI is a lot of times you run out of ports, right? On the back of the Epiphan Pearl here, you can see we've got an SDI. We've got a lot of connectivity. There's a USB, there's an SDI, there is an HDMI. But a lot of times you run out of ports, and one easy way to add a video source is to use NDI because it all comes over the Ethernet connection. So there's an NDI version of pretty much all the cameras at HuddleCam and PTZOptics. And this is an example, or at least of PTZOptics. Here's an example of electronic pan tilt zoom. So giving a teacher the capability, even though it's not a full PTZ camera, because it has 4K video, it can act like a 4K camera, or like a PTZ camera electronically, which is pretty nice. Now, the Simple Track 2, I wanted to show the software really quickly here. And you can, one of the cool things about the software here is it allows you to see how the tracking camera works. And I think I'd like to just go right into the settings here. I'm going to turn tracking off for a second. I just wanted to show you how this works. This is our studio. But you can see here that there's like a tracking zone. And just basics, like if you wanted to maybe have a blocking zone where there was an area of a classroom, perhaps, that you don't want the camera to, track. There's a lot of really interesting options here, including the ability to control it over the network and integrate it into Crestron systems and other things like that. So I'm going to quickly go through a couple of these slides, and then I hope maybe we'll get some additional questions. But the cool thing about the tracking is that you can set up different tracking modes. And so I've got 2 tracking cameras here to show. This tracking camera actually does more of like a head and shoulders shot. And the great thing about a head and shoulders, this one, I just turned this one off, Mike, so I got to turn it back on real quick with the software. But you can have different modes, and that's kind of what we're showing here, which is great. You can have a half body, a full body. One of the really important things is to make sure that the whiteboard is always in focus. And so it's just a really great camera. And so if there's so many different types of classrooms, you always want to make sure the notes are being captured in the videos that you're recording. And that's just so important. And I've talked to so many of our customers who said, the Simple Track 2 has that ability to go in and say, always make sure the camera is capturing this specific height. And again, we kind of just looked at that a little bit in the software there. So you can set that there. And now that I'll go back, just save that. And then I'll just enable tracking back on. And then just to finish that demo really quickly, you can see this one is set up so that when I'm back here, like I would have this whole sign and whatever my whiteboard area was. And then the next one right here is more of like a head and shoulders. So you got these different options. Every classroom's different, just to give you kind of a feel for how the auto tracking camera works. Mike loves it in a live video production environment because he's always got a camera he can cut to that gives like live video movement, which is awesome. It helps engage students in a really great way. And it's really one of my favorite cameras. So all the adjustable modes and the preset zones as well, we can send TCP triggers to devices based on zones in the area. So you can have a preset zone when the teacher walks into that lecture zone to just have the camera zoom in completely, or have a software that is doing video recording for you cut to a new camera entirely. So really cool stuff that you can do with the Simple Track 2. The management software easily allows you to manage as many Simple Tracks as you need. We have universities managing hundreds of devices, and they manage it all from the software, and it integrates into Crestron and Extron. And it's ready to live stream too. And the cool thing about live streaming is it's an easy way to integrate the camera into a lot of different learning management systems that use that. Here's an example of connecting the Simple Track 2 into the Epiphan Pearl, and then also including a 3.5 audio input. We've got a couple great case studies on our website you can check out to learn a little bit more. And then with the PTZOptics cameras, essentially, like we showed earlier in the first slide, there's just so many different types of connectivity on these cameras that it makes it really easy to integrate it into a classroom, whether it's NDI or HDMI or SDI, and they have a 5-year warranty along with all of the lifetime support that we offer for our products. Just showing off a cool couple pictures. There's a lot of different mounting options. So when you want to have a PTZ camera, it's great because it's discrete, right? It's small, it's discrete. You can mount it at the back of a classroom. If you have a white wall, I would say get a white camera with a white mount, because it's really just out of the way and discrete in a classroom environment. There was a recent case study by Rosemont College where they outlined the entire installation of a 2-camera PTZ system using Zoom, and it became their school's kind of Zoom room standard. So take a look for that. And I'm going to skip through the final slides because I want to get right to the Q&A. But we are seeing a lot of esports clubs and classrooms coming together. I find it really fun to see the students getting involved. We've had a lot of students enjoying being a camera operator, for example, for whether it's esports or school announcements or live school sports, which is another big one. This is just an example of a small esports setup where they have a production computer, a camera, and audio system. The broadcast clubs are really popular in not just in higher education, but also in K through 12 schools. And there's like gamer cams, and it's really exciting. And I'm happy to answer questions. Here's a basketball game being live streamed, school sports, and a lot of student volunteering options. And of course, we all pretty much got through graduation at this point, but there was a lot of live streaming going on for graduations, and it's fun to be a part of it. So we're here to answer questions at this point, and I hope we get a lot of them, I guess. Hey, George.
Hey, Paul, I want to tag on one that I think is a great story between the two of you here. So the concept of the one button studio, George, you kind of talked about this, the Nano being that very simple to use, single camera, single presentation type environment. And so if you look at what Penn State put out, it's almost 2.5 years now since they dropped this concept of the one button studio. It was a mishmash of hardware and software to build an environment where a teacher can walk into a room, insert an SD card into a computer and hit a button, right? And then it records their lecture effectively. But Paul, with the simple track camera, right, the one concept that's always lost in that is, well, what happens if I move over to the whiteboard, or I have to have my whiteboard right next to me? But with the simple track, you sort of solve that problem, right? So you can build an environment, a classroom, where anybody can walk in. They don't have to be a camera operator. They don't have to have a camera operator. All they have to do is be able to walk up and hit the record button, right? They insert their SD card, they hit the record button, and then they walk over to the podium and start to present. And if they need to move to the whiteboard, they can move to the whiteboard. If they need to just stand still and put up their presentation, they can, but it doesn't require a big staff. And I think this is really key, because as we see education moving forward, it's all about, the live stream and the on-demand content, right? There's going to be more and more content feeding into the CMSs, into the LMSs, and managing that content. And when we look at a large campus or large university, you can't have a staff to run it all. So you need that environment where a teacher can go, okay, I've got my class, my schedule's ready to go. I'm walking in and I'm hitting the record button, right? And it's just, present and produce. So when you put the Simple Track and the Pearl Nano together, you can effectively build that environment where all the teacher has to do again is just walk in and hit the button. And it's up and running and it's managed and it's ready to go. And if they want the file at the end, they can pull the SD card, or with the LMS integrations that Epiphan already has, it just dumps right into the CMS or into the LMS and you're ready to go. So I think this is one to keep in mind as people are building these environments, that the automation side of it, yes, Crestron is phenomenal. We love the fact that the integration for Crestron is with all of these products, but it's expensive, and we're not always going to have the budgets to put a Crestron system in every room, right? And moving into your Extrons and your Crestrons, or your AMXs and all the other control platforms, we see a lot of QSC right now with the QSys control. Again, all very expensive solutions for building out a room. But really, you don't need it. And even Paul, with your latest controller, the fact that you've got the extra APIs there to control third-party products, to control other things, you've now got this ability to create the one-button studio without anything more than just your camera, your controller, and a Pearl. It's just a beautiful way to look at building a remote televised classroom.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I did follow the one button studio from Penn State. Here we are in Pennsylvania. And I was taking I thought it was great. And I didn't even make that connection that the Pearl here has that record button and that stream button right there already.
Yep.
It's perfect.
Yep. Yeah,
no, it's beautiful. No, go ahead, George.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, for us, as I kind of mentioned in my slides, for us, it's all about that ease of use, right? Trying to streamline those things. And like you said, not all rooms are the same, right? You can't have a one size fits all scenario. Maybe in a huge auditorium, something like a Crestron implementation makes sense, but it may not. I think what we're all seeing more and more is smaller and smaller spaces, because so much more of this content is being delivered digitally. You don't need an entire room filled with empty seats to shoot some of this stuff. I mean, right. I'm sure the room you're in right now, Nick, is probably not that big, but
one wall, the other wall.
Exactly. But you digitally can deliver effectively in that small of a space with the right tools, just as easily as a gigantic auditorium. In fact, better in some ways. And that's, I think, the direction we're starting to see, like you said off the top. People are crossing geographic barriers with this move to online, right? I have lots of colleagues here. For people interested, I'm based in Ottawa, Canada. I have colleagues that are taking courses at Stanford, right? Like, it's because you can do that now. It's just something you just do. And it's brilliant.
No, we've had some amazing conversations with clients over the last year that are, a veterinarian school, for instance, that is, doing continuing education for vets after they've left school, right? So they can stay on top of it, and it's all online. Everything's remote. We're a construction company that is teaching people how to use heavy machinery, all online, remote, because they can't bring them out. And even as we start to see people transition back into offices, these large conference rooms are shrinking down because they don't want to stuff 30 people in the conference room. So they're taking these smaller spaces and turning them into Zoom rooms and broadcast rooms. And all these technologies are perfect for this because it allows them to communicate to the masses. And so much of what we see right now is the live stream, but the on-demand part is missed as well. And from an educational standpoint, I spend more time watching YouTube videos to learn something, right? And watching the pre-recorded content than I do the live content, right? And so these, all these technologies really are the boon to the success, the ability to record and publish, right? And having, the simple tracks and these other pieces come together is really what makes it all possible at a much lower cost than it ever was, say, 5 years ago, or even 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Awesome. Tess is here as well, and she's going to keep her eye on the chat. And I don't know if you've accumulated questions for us, Tess.
Yeah, we definitely have quite a few questions. One is going to be for you, Paul. Does the PTZOptics camera support the latest SRT ID spec for connection?
Oh, you stumped me on that one, actually, to be completely honest.
I think it's really new. I don't know that it's even rolled out that fast yet.
Yeah, that might be part of the newer spec that I don't even think we're using yet, although we plan to update it soon.
That might be helpful to answer for the PTZOptics question as well, George, because we just implemented SRT. So if there's something new, I doubt that we've quite gotten there yet.
Yeah, SRT is a fun one because it's much like NDI, it's something that's constantly being updated. But as hardware manufacturers for both PTZOptics and us here at Epiphan, we can't necessarily move at quite the same pace as the originators of these protocols can. It kind of filters down a little bit. Someone mentioned in chat earlier, NDI 5 is out, but it's also really more, about a month away realistically in terms of it being in the wild, right? It's a similar thing. They can announce the spec, they can say it's there, but before you see it in the wild, baked into products, there's some development cycles that come there. So, we're definitely all working on those. So
it's announced, but it's not out.
Exactly.
That's always,
big difference.
I mean, and we are in that perfect time, right? We just came out of April when we would ordinarily see these big announcements, coming out of NAB and then, going into Infocom and the other things for summer. So it's a perfect time to see a lot of these announcements, but they all bring really interesting ideas, right? With SRT, with NDI 5, all these new features are only going to make all this better, but it needs time to bake. I mean, this is just like every iOS announcement, right? It's a great announcement, but until it actually hits my phone and it's had time to burn in and test, it's just an announcement. Yeah. So we just all got to hold our breath a little longer and wait for these things to really get baked in.
True. I'm not sure whose presentation this was referring to, but there's a question from David. Is there any way to integrate with Blackboard Collaborate?
Collaborate. Well, with the cameras, so Blackboard does have just a simple, I think it's a cloud-based way to record video via WebRTC that you can use with almost any webcam. So whether you're using a USB connection on a camera, I also believe, George, that Blackboard supports RTMP streaming ingests via video. Is that correct?
I think so. I haven't touched it in a long time myself, I'll be honest. The word integrate is a touchy one. Being a technical guy, it's always a fun word. So from Epiphan's perspective on the Pearls, we do not have a direct integration with Blackboard. Typically Blackboard being more of an LMS, where we have the direct integrations with the CMS, to not dive too deep down that rabbit hole, but those are kind of different layers. But that being said, you take something like the Pearl, which has a wide range of different streaming protocols, and even some very generic agnostic ways of doing file uploads to things like FTP servers or SFTP servers or Windows shares, so on. It's possible to create your own, unique ways of doing things using these common protocols like RTMP streaming or file uploads. SRT, we've mentioned a bunch, and there's people in the chat mentioning that as well. Basically, any of the platforms that can use these generic protocols, there's ways of making it work. It's just maybe not quite to the same depth the way Pearls work with Kaltura and Panopto, where they essentially become fully automated boxes you never have to touch almost. So
the base Blackboard Collaborate is really it's a Zoom alternative built into the LMS. So Paul, the standard USB connection gets you in the door from a camera perspective and makes it accessible. Coming out NDI off of a Pearl-2 and flipping that through virtual input would be another way to get the content into Collaborate.
That's an interesting answer to the question, Nick, which I think is so interesting, is that if anyone is still new to NDI, which has now been out for 7 years, I believe, coming on now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, 2015, yeah.
It was 2015. So it's been out for 7 years, and I just sometimes have to remind myself, not everyone is using all the NDI tools that are available today. NDI has kind of become its own company from NewTek even over the years, and NDI.tv is the new website where you can download the NDI tools. And at that website, one of the tools that's available for now, Mac and PC, is the webcam input for NDI sources. And it's a great little application. It runs in the system tray, so you never even see it. It's in the background. You can select any NDI source on your local area network and virtualize it into a webcam that can be used with Zoom or any software that uses a webcam. And sometimes making that connection from like IP video to a webcam source on a computer was kind of a new concept. But now with NDI video allowing you to do that on any Mac PC, I'm not sure about Linux, it just makes it so easy to bring video into different software solutions.
So that's a perfect segue. So a question just popped up that somebody was asking a solution for running USB from webcam to computer. Obviously, I'm assuming this person's looking for, hey, we got a camera that's, I mean, ideally, you don't mount your cameras always next to the computer, right? That's the issue. And so this is a great point, because when you take a camera like one of your PTZ cameras that has NDI in it, you don't need to run USB. So downloading virtual input, or they now call it webcam input, it shows you how long I've been playing with it. It's a simple app, so now we can connect that camera remotely to the computer without running anything but a network cable, which can run the distance. USB, of course, there are lots of USB extenders on the market. And so there are two types. There's active and passive. The passive don't go that far. The active ones have a little circuit in them that allow them to extend over a fiber and go much, much greater distance. But the longer the cable, the more expensive the cable is, the thicker it is, and it comes with all these problems. There are some interesting companies like Icron out there, which makes a converter that goes either over the Ethernet or over fiber that allows you to extend. But again, all these things just add to the cost, right? They can become very, very expensive to add all these dongles and converters. And because you can purchase a camera with NDI or built right into it, you don't need to worry about extending USB. It's just a very simple app that runs in the computer. In fact, we're using it here. So I'm connected on a PC in this Zoom, and I'm running virtual input off of an encoder mounted to our camera, pulling NDI right into this conference call.
Yeah, it's amazing how easy it is, how low latency it is, the quality of it. Now that's on your local area network. Now I know a lot of universities and colleges have large, wide-spanning networks, and NDI has also gotten more secure on larger networks. I feel like NDI 5.0 and Access Manager have brought security to NDI groups, where you can group sources of NDI video over the local area network and make sure they're not discoverable to every student, on the local area network as well. So NDI is still new if you really think about it in that way, because some of these tools are just being released now.
That's also another place, Paul, where something like SRT can come in as well, where you're trying to, NDI initially was really focused on that local area network, and 5 is definitely going to expand that a bit, which is great to see. But SRT from its inception was designed about traversing networks, whether those are just local VLANs or whether that's to the other side of the globe. It really doesn't matter. And the security and encryption is all baked in. And it can still be on good connections, extremely low latency, not as low as local NDI, but I've done streams, sending my SRT streams to our office, for example, and I can be under 100 milliseconds, and that's going from my home to our office across the internet. So even if you can stand just a little bit of latency, sometimes there's some fantastic tech out there to help expand that reach.
That's funny, the little bit of latency. It's an interesting conversation because I have people right now like, oh, we can't have latency, and I'm like, every day you're sitting on Zoom calls, Teams calls, Skype calls. You've been dealing with latency. You just don't realize it because you're not in front of the person, right? This concept of latency is gone once you leave the room. So a little latency is inherent in our life. It's everywhere. I mean, we watch TV with a delay. We just don't realize it, right? Unless you're watching Netflix and you just hit the play button, right? There's a little latency in our life everywhere we turn, and it's okay. I think we've all grown accustomed to, it's that little bit of forgiveness there of, what'd you say? Sorry, I was on mute. It's there, it exists, so it's okay. And our audiences are okay with it as well. They've become accustomed to it because it's just part of the world we live in now. Until we all get, the new satellite internet at our house that's supposed to be faster, well, we'll get over it for a bit. It's not a bad thing. So, but there are some great, we've been testing a couple of different applications. I mean, obviously there's some really baked hardware solutions out there designed to do, backhaul between locations, but there's a lot of great software solutions. When you look at, products like MediaLooks, they have a great software only app that you can run between locations to take NDI or, whatever's connected to your system, flip it to SRT, send it down line, and then bring it back into a production environment on the other side. And you've got a lot of control with the product of adjusting your latency, adjusting your bandwidth, because that's the biggest thing, is really being able to control your bandwidth. If you end up in an environment where you have no control over how much internet is on one side or the other. This is a great one. I get people, well, I have it really fast, I got a gig line here. It's like, okay, that's fine. But what about the other side? The person transmitting and receiving from you, what do they have? Because with all of these technologies, the lowest common denominator is always the network, and it's always who's got the slowest network. Right. Yeah. And that's going to be your hiccup when you're looking at these things. So you need a tool that can adjust to the bandwidth available. I think, Paul, you guys have done a lot with WebRTC over the years, and it does a great job of adjusting and managing that bandwidth, right? And mitigating the problems that sort of, arise in people's bandwidth changing, at the time. Because the worst thing that happens is a bunch of people come into the office and start, streaming YouTube videos in 4K, and then your bandwidth's gone, right? And so we've got to, you really have to be able to be flexible in these environments.
Yeah, and Nick, I forgot to mention, congratulations to JB&A for announcing the NAB show pre-show.
We're doing it, baby. We're doing it.
In Las Vegas. I think that's the first week of October. I think it's October 7 and 8. I'm so excited to be there. Thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, I think it's time to rip the Band-Aid off and get together with people, have pizza, have beer, get together, share war stories of what's happened the last few years. But more than anything, I need hugs. I need to get together with people and hug it out and enjoy. I mean, who enjoys Vegas? But it's just time to get together and swap war stories and look at technology again. I mean, we've all been huddled in long enough. It's time let's just get to it, people. So thank you for pumping that one. It's going to be a great event. I think, George, you guys are going to be there. So it's going to be,
Epiphan will be there.
Great technology this year.
Fingers crossed I will be there, but Epiphan will be there.
We got a couple months, man. We got a couple months. We're going to get you guys down here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and Paul, we've got a bigger location this year. So we're going bigger. We took a bigger room. We're going to have more space for people to spread out if they're nervous. And which means we're just going to have to bring in bigger pizza and beer. That's just, to meet the room expectation. But I'm excited. I think NAB is going to be a little smaller this year. I'm hearing from a lot of manufacturers that are like, iffy on the size of the space, but it's time for us to get together and look at the technology again.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm very excited. We're planning out our booth and everything. By the way, some people wanted to have see the slider camera that we have. So
Yeah.
I've actually got Mike's got a really good shot of it here, and then I have a NDI camera attached, and I've really wanted to show the video from this NDI wireless camera because I have it on. It's just to show how great NDI has become over the past couple of years. Do we have the shot, Mike? Boom. Okay, so this is just from my cell phone here, just to give you guys a look at our studio. This is that slider camera that we have, and here's Mike. He's been producing the show today. We had some. Here's YouTube over here. We had some issues with YouTube in the beginning. Our internet service provider, there's a little storm in the area, but Zoom stayed strong, so we're good.
So wait, is it motorized?
Yes.
So it's just, okay, yeah. Okay, got it. That's so funny. I have the same one, but without the motor. I'm jealous.
Yeah, this one's motorized. And so Mike loves his little 3-monitor setup here. And there's a little controller for, you can see here, he's got Zoom on one monitor, got vMix in the middle, and then he's got YouTube and Facebook over here. And then he's still got a line of sight to either my studio over here or sometimes Tessa's over here.
Do you know what the name of the slider is? The brand?
What is it called? I don't know.
Heather does have her hand raised.
Okay.
If you'd like to chime in.
Heather, sorry, I couldn't see it. Oh, sorry, bad joke, bad Zoom joke.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I don't have a camera on my computer. So I have two questions for you, actually. One is, you were talking about the USB 3. So my camera and computer are about 30 feet away from each other. It doesn't seem like they make a USB 3 that long. So, and I also live in a community where we do not have high-speed internet. It does not exist where I am. So, like you were talking about that unit in front of you, you were talking about that could be used remotely instead. But if I don't have the good enough internet, will stuff like that be reliable? Or do I need to cable in to my computer?
Well, one distinction that I think we could make here is that even if you don't have great internet, I wonder if your local area network, like the network inside of your office or school, is different than the internet that you're receiving from your internet service provider. So the network that you have likely could support an NDI camera, right? An NDI HX camera that you can connect over Ethernet instead of USB. And it's likely that your network can support it. An NDI HX video source is about 10 to 20 megabits per second. And it's likely that your network can support like a gigabit, so up to 1,000 megabits possibly, depending on what other things you have going on. Does anyone want to add to that idea?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is, yes, always do a cable. So if you can connect a network cable to your computer and to your camera, go that path. Like, let's not try and go wireless. So for your laptop or for whatever your computer is, make sure you're plugged into the network switch, if at all possible. And then 30 feet for USB 3, yeah, is a bit of a stretch for a standard cable. So you have to look at an active cable. And there are extenders on the market that will take that USB source and string it over either a Cat5 or a fiber optic cable or some other type of extender. And it's basically two boxes, one hanging on the back of the camera, one plugged into your computer. In the chat room here, a bunch of people were chiming in which ones they're using from Crestron or other companies. However, they are expensive. They're not an inexpensive box. I mean, these converters can run anywhere from $500 up on that side. So that's one of the things to consider. Is like, well, if that's the case, moving away from USB is your next alternative. And so moving to an HDMI cable or an SDI cable, as Paul talked about earlier, which is a base. I think I have an SDI sitting here nearby me, is a cable that can go much, much greater distance. And then you utilize a little box on the other side, like the one we're giving away today, the AVIO, which takes that SDI or HDMI signal and converts it to USB to bring it into your computer. And so that's an alternative to, oftentimes we run in with people that are saying this, well, I can't get USB that far. Well, don't use USB. Right?
Basically.
Use a SDI or HDMI, go baseband, and bring that signal to your computer and then convert it to USB at your computer side. Now, that's only to get the source, that content into your computer. As far as bandwidth out, it's a test. I mean, you really got to get on some Zoom calls with friends, get on, whatever your platform of choice is, and try it and see what kind of quality you can get out if you're going to YouTube. Remember, most streaming doesn't have to be, 4K. Streaming doesn't even have to be 1080p. 720 can actually cut your bandwidth tremendously and get your stream down. And, and it all depends on what people are watching it on, right? I mean, 4K on this doesn't look any different than 1080p. So we don't always have to be super high bandwidth, right, to create content that's engaging, connect with audiences, and tell a story. I mean, some of the best stories ever told were drawn on cave walls. So, I mean, it's okay to be low res on that regard.
Yeah, Nick, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where, when we're looking at these connectivity options, there's kind of a ranking when it comes to distance. USB is somewhere down there, and then HDMI, and then SDI, and then networks, right? And there's a different usage for each of them. And you're absolutely right. Passive USB, you're gonna hit about 15 feet at best, really. And then you go active after that, but then you're spending big money. Networking is dirt cheap in comparison and can go way farther. So when you can leverage that, it's a great option. And yeah, using an NDI based camera or something like that is, a lot of people were mentioning using other, Cat6 extenders. They're not super expensive, but there might be less expensive ways to do it.
A network switch is still cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
And Cat5 cables are still cheaper. Yeah,
so if you haven't invested in a camera yet, then, looking at something like the PTZOptics, NDI based, webcams even is a great place to look at spending a little bit of money without going too crazy and still leverage the network connectivity to get that distance out of it. And it'll give you flexibility in what you bring it into. So that's definitely a great choice, for sure.
All right. Hey, I have one other question here while I've got you. So I'm seeing that there's a lag between the audio and the video in this webinar that we're doing. I've ran into the same problem with one of my recordings. So is that an issue with, again, the internet, or is that actually something to do with your setup?
Both and.
Yes. Zoom with bad bandwidth can definitely break sync, and that can be annoying. There's not much you can do about that. On our ends, I mean, I'm not noticing any latency or sync differences for Paul or for Nick from my end. So I'm gonna guess, Heather, you mentioned your bandwidth is not the best. I'm gonna guess it's Zoom with lack of bandwidth falling apart a little bit. I see that all the time with one of my colleagues who lives a little bit farther out in the country, and sometimes on Zoom calls, if we're at a 1 hour mark in a meeting, he's so far out of sync, it's a disaster.
Yeah, I think with most of the platforms, they try to prioritize audio, because in the end, I'm okay if I lose video. Yeah. If I can't hear what they're saying, story's over, right? Yeah. And so with many of these platforms over the years, they prioritize the audio first so that we can keep the conversation going and then bring the video back into sync later if we're all out altogether.
Which is kind of a funny segue to something I kind of pointed out, is one of the advantages of looking at live streaming versus video conferencing is that if you have the bandwidth, doing something live streaming wise with an encoder like the Pearls means that you have manual control over what you're doing with the quality of the video. Yeah. Where in video conferencing, it's all auto detect, right? It's a gamble. Even if you have great internet, it might just make up its own mind to do something else because it just feels like it that day. Where with live streaming, these are really kind of different use cases and different data flows, but you can better manually control the bit rate to take advantage of the bandwidth you do have, scale up or down the video, and make choices on your own without relying on whether it's Zoom or Teams or whoever making those choices for you. It won't save you from bad bandwidth, unfortunately, but it it definitely gives you at least options and choices.
It's it's one of those things with a lot of encoders, you get that control of adding latency, adding delay to audio to sync, because audio is always faster than video. It just takes less space. And so, you tend to see delays happen like that. We actually add a little bit of delay to my audio on this side to keep up with the fact that we're taking a camera and encoding it to NDI and adding a little latency there. And so we do it on our side just to try and circumvent that ahead of time. And I guess that goes to a really interesting conversation, which is is the conversation you have unidirectional or bidirectional, right? With Zoom, this is a conversation, right? We're chatting, we're asking questions, we're having this. And so we are willing to put up with, like I said, sometimes those little latency issues and those little glitches that happen. When you get to a live stream, it's a unidirectional conversation, except for the fact that there's chat, right? You're not getting audio back from people. So it's very much a one-way push where you can have more granular control over your bandwidth, your audio delay, your sync issues, all that stuff. And because you're just pushing, you're pushing content on a constant basis. And so you get a little more control that way, and you get the ability to do a little bit more, which gives you, the ability to use a better encoder at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really a decision of, are we going to be a one-way conversation or a two-way conversation? And then that changes the hardware you're going to use and the platform you're going to put on.
So we've done so much today in this hour-long webinar. We've been recording the whole thing. So we're going to chop it up into nice little chunks for everyone to, send out or email. If you want to email this to a colleague, I'm going to have, everybody's presentations together. I'll get them all over to you, Nick. And we've got a giveaway. Here it is. I just need to make sure everyone is here. Jim Vaughn has won the PTZOptics camera.
Congrats, Jim. Round of applause.
Congrats.
Jim's here. Okay, good. And then Dan Cooling won the NDI decoder. And Dan's here, I see, in Zoom. Hi, Dan.
Congrats.
And then Nicholas Hood. Is Nicholas Hood here? Yes, he is. Hi, Nick. You won the Epiphan capture frame grabber. AV.io.
Capture card, frame grabber, interchangeable terms, whatever you feel like using, but congrats to everyone. It's fantastic.
It grabs a lot of frames very fast. Awesome. Well,
thank you so
Paul,
much, everybody.
Thanks for putting this together, man. I'm glad everybody got together. It was fun. Let's do it in person next time.
Can't wait.
I am so excited. I can't wait for the JB&A pre-show. I'm going to be there at NAB for sure. So if you are going to NAB, let me know. If you're not going to NAB, we're going to do a live stream. Tess is very excited about that. Right, Tess?
I am. I'm excited to bring you guys with us because I know some people won't be able to go this year. So we'll be bringing you with us virtually.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks. See you next time.